first, we're going to start off with Formula E and their wild championship race in Berlin. And Josh with me, of course. We saw essentially a crazy race where we had 14 drivers coming into the race with the championship hope. We saw Mitch Evans starting third. Looked like he was going to be the big favorite. But before you know it, we saw 3 of the top 5 in points out before a full lap of green was completed. Mitch Evans on the start line didn't go. He was out of the race when Eduardo Montoya collided with him. Nowhere to go. First red flag. Then something broke on Jake Dennis's vehicle as it was entering turn 1, locked up, rubbed up against the wall. He was out, and we hadn't even completed a lap yet under green. Nobody was ahead of Nyck de Vries at this point when it came to the points championship. And from there on, it was essentially Nick needing to work his way to the front just to score points, but he wasn't under pressure because he didn't have anybody in the points ahead of him. He did that. He is the first world champion of the ABB Formula E world champion. And as he does this, we hear that Mercedes, they win the team championship. However, this morning, news from Autosport Motorsports that Mercedes could be the third manufacturer on their way out after BMW and Audi. Starting with you, Ed, thoughts on Nyck de Vries' championship and the potential that if Mercedes announced they're out, along with the potential de Vries leaving?
Well, Joe, I'm very glad you asked me about that because obviously it's the big story, Mercedes leaving. But first off, I think full marks to Nyck de Vries. He'd done really all the hard work earlier in the season. The key thing that really got his championship back under control was those 2 second places in the 2 races in London. He didn't really need to score any points here to win the championship, but he was able to sneak home 4 anyway in a bit of a harem scared. There were 2 moments really that I think really showed de Vries' quality in this race in Berlin, the final race of the season. There was the big crash at the beginning between Evans and Mortara that you mentioned, Joe. De Vries was right behind Mortara in that he was the first on the scene, went right to the inside. There was about a cigarette paper in between de Vries and the wall and about a rat's tail in between de Vries and the wreckage of Mortara's car. He did actually hit the wheel arch as it fell off the Venturi. So yeah, and then de Vries had that moment where he was free wide with not only his teammate on the inside, but Lotter sandwiched in between the 2 Mercedes and just had to back out to narrowly avoid contact. I think Van Dorn did just hit Lotter and the wheel arch fell off the Porsche. But yeah, 2 moments where, and then towards the end, de Vries was just really backing off on the last lap, which is why Sam Bird got him. But yeah, he'd done enough and deservedly won the championship. We won 2 races earlier in the season, and his pace has been great. Formula E Zone, when we did our top 10 rookies of last season, he was, I think, easily the best rookie of last year. And in fact, he was even in our top 5 drivers at like midpoint last year during the pandemic. So not surprising to see him do so well this season. As for Mercedes pulling out, it does seem surreal after winning both championships that Mercedes are thinking about, well, we're going to pull out at the end of next season. Then it seems a bit surreal. But of course, it's the Daimler board that's really behind this decision. And it's all to do with money. It's all to do with the exposure that the Mercedes team gets. Obviously, it's not going to be as much as Formula One, which has way more eyeballs on it, let's be honest. So the big challenge really for Mercedes is convincing the board to stay on. And I'm sure Toto Wolff is going to be hurriedly making moves behind the scenes. I'm sure you agree with that, Josh.
Absolutely. We were discussing it in the commentary, weren't we? Both about de Vries and the Mercedes situation under the red flag that came out as well. And I've actually, yesterday in the show, I said that, de Vries, in my opinion, he's looked into the championship as well, purely on the basis that he had some good races. The 2 races in Puebla, actually going back, Valencia all the way until New York race 2, he was pretty much pointless, and it was a bad run. And he started the season so strong in Diriyah with pole position, topped the group stage as well, and race victory. And then he immediately fell back, and then won again in Valencia due to that horrible battery save issue that everybody had with FIA taking away the usable energy in the last seconds. But as I came to agree with Ed and actually changed my mind, the 2 second places...
Yes, I convinced you, Josh.
You did, Ed. You did. The 2 second places he had back at London, I thought actually thinking back, I think I said it at the time as well, and I checked back the commentary that we did, and I agreed. It was a great weekend for Nyck de Vries. He did exactly what he needed to do. He was the driver to watch in London. He was constantly going to battles. Race 1 yesterday, no points on the board, of course. It was a very bad qualifying for Mercedes. But today, a combination of luck, a combination of bizarre incidents, which saw the second, third, and fourth people in the championship drop out, which made him the favourite. But he sort of came into it. Do you remember after the second full course yellow? It was all to play for, and de Vries was actually right up there. He was having battles with everybody. He was not letting go of that championship. He wanted to get as high up as possible. He wanted to make sure as much as possible. It was the de Vries we saw on the F2 days. So, yeah, I'm going to say it as well. Fantastic championship. And in order for Nyck de Vries as well, he becomes the first ever Dutch world champion. Eat that, Max Verstappen. He's beat him by about 4.5 months if Verstappen wins the F1 title. And if Mercedes do leave Formula E, as you said, Ed, they get another year in it, so they won't commit because they'll leave before the start of Gen 3, which is, as you said, Season 9, or Season 8 to go. So they've got another year, but we both sort of agreed at the end of the commentary, they're going to keep it now. I think they're going to stay. I think it was more of a threat. I think they want to change the balance of power. And you brought up as well, Ed, the McLaren situation. Well, McLaren would be powered by a Mercedes powertrain. So I think that is going to sort of sway them as well in the fact that for Alexander Agag, as you said, they're very much going to be on the phone saying, look, you've just won the title. You're very clearly there. You just come with us. Come with us for the next generation and bring McLaren with us as well.
No,
but
please
isn't
don't
it?
go. Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Don't go. But isn't it always the bad thing? I mean, we commentate on all these sports, we report on all of these motorsport events throughout the world. No matter where you go, it's always a Mercedes winning both championships.
Mercedes winning both championships, and the final race, Mercedes powertrain, Norman Nato taking that win in essentially the Venturi, but it does have the Mercedes powertrain. So overall, it had to be a pretty good day. And for Venturi, good year overall. Matara finished second in the points. Of course, he wanted to be running, not on the first lap. And of course, both drivers in Venturi getting to win. But this was such a chaotic season. Nyck de Vries, lowest scoring Formula E champion, only 99 points. Most was John-Eric Vergne with 198. Considering everything we saw this year and shaping up for next year, starting with you, Josh, do we anticipate another chaotic championship in the next season? Or could we finally start seeing a team maybe pull out and start to dominate a little bit?
DS Cheetah, I thought, was going that way. They had 3 championships on the bounce, 2 with Vergne, 1 with Da Costa, but they've slipped away a lot this season. Qualifying is strong, and as Ed, I think, is going to say as well, the fact that their race pace has just been all over this year as well. I like that the championship has been less than 100 points. It gives it a lot. And yes, this season has had about 99 problems, but one of them hasn't been the fantastic racing we've had. Constant battles as well. No matter what race you look at, there's always been something to nick at, something to pick, and that's it. That's the race of the year. Oh, hang on a minute, that's the race of the year as well. There's just so much to play for. So I think going forward as well, the only thing that we sort of remains constant with it is this mixed up qualifying that they've got. The drivers don't like the group stages because the track evolution is so different across from qualifying Group 1 to qualifying Group 4. But today, I think, has made a very strong argument because we've seen, yesterday it was Da Costa, today it was Evans. Both of them got through from qualifying Group 1. We had no one from Group 2 today, and mainly came in Group 3 and 4. So it's proving it can be done. So this group stage is here to stay. What would we replace it with? A one-lap shootout like Super Bowl? That just means that the first guy out is going to start at the back anyway. It doesn't change anything. There's no real way that can be fair. So I think this is the great format. And I think next year's championship as well, the last year of these generation of cars as well, it's going to be all-out war. And I think we're going to see much of the same again. And I hope the driver lineup stays the same as well, because we've had... And I want another year like this. I want to go into the last race with literally anybody who can win the title. It's more open. And I've had a lot more fun because we had Mortara and Evans crash on the line. That wiped out 2. Dennis hit the wall. That wiped out another. Da Costa hit the wall. That wiped out another. I like that. You're eliminating them one by one. And it's like what is it? Where rats in a barrel. You put loads of rats in a barrel as well and seal the lid, and then at the end of it, there's one strong rat that comes out as well at the top, and he's a completely different character. That's what de Vries has done. He's come out as a different character. He's a world champion now. He's got bragging rights over the rest of the field. He's got that much bragging rights, actually. I saw on the gala that's going on round about now, he's currently standing on a table with his teammate, Eduardo Mortara, and also there with Alexandra Gag singing Can You Feel It? Can You Feel It? By the Jackson. So, yeah, not bad at all. And I hope we get another close championship like this next season as well.
Yeah, I agree with Josh, and I've really enjoyed this season on the whole. I think it's been a bit of a peaks and valleys kind of season. We've seen some of the best of Formula E, but also some couple of embarrassing moments. We've seen Formula E at its best and at its worst. And I'm very glad, Joe, that you did take the time to mention Norman Nato, the race winner, of course, let's not forget, taking his first win as a rookie. And I felt so sorry for him because all the attention was, of course, on Nyck de Vries, rightfully, as, you know, the world. I think he's one of the youngest Formula E world champions, as well as the first Dutch FIA world champion. So certainly the youngest Formula E world champion of the 5 we've had so far in the first 7 seasons. Is that correct? Because I think Vern definitely won 2, so it would be 5 so far, or 6. I don't know. I have to do the maths on that one. But as for next season, in terms of do I think it's going to be this crazy again? Well, they've already talked about changing the qualifying format, which is the big thing. In terms of it's been something that's been so controversial. It seemed that if the problem is if you qualify at the back, then you can't make progress on some of the circuits. And it's the case where if you do well in the championship, you're punished for having the best car. And Mercedes have been the victim of it at points. We also saw at the end, it sort of ended up kind of balancing out. They had a really strong final race, which got them just ahead of Jaguar at the end in the Constructors' Championship, which you can see mirroring in the Jaguar shirt. Not entirely happy about that, but that's the way it goes sometimes. So I don't think it's going to be quite so crazy next season, actually. I do think we are going to see more of a kind of natural order emerge, but I still think we're going to see great individual races. And that's something that I'm really excited to see. So, and I'm also really excited to see the young drivers that have done really well this season. Guys like Cassidy, Nato, and Dennis, of course, who nearly won the championship and was cruelly denied by that failure. As we say, the rear tyres just locked up and it all just went wrong for him just after it went so wrong for Mitch Evans and Mortara for similar reasons that weren't really the driver's fault. So I'm really looking forward to next season, them getting another chance. But we'll have to see if it's. I can't imagine it being quite so close, but we might just see 2 or 3 really strong teams all fighting it out for those top positions, and it coming down to the wire again. Hopefully, I believe it will be Berlin again next year, wouldn't it be, Josh? The final few races.
Year today, exactly, will be the last race.
Berlin has become, I think, one of the best places for a season finale, just because the last year Formula E Fest, this year it just seems to start to stand out up there with. Not on the high level as Monaco E-Prix, but it's starting to be one of the favorites to look forward to. Now, of course, we did hear some news from motorsports.com. Adam Lemeries shared it with us that essentially Mortara suffered a fractured vertebrae after that first lap crash. Just amazing that he was moving around, walking after that crash with that injury. And of course, it's not till January we come back for Formula E, so a 4-month break, but we still have a lot of questions entering the next season. Edward, Josh, what are some of the big stories and developments you'll be watched for during this off-season?
I think coming into this one as well for the off-season, the big question is, how is Audi's disappearance going to affect the running order of the field? We've got de Grassi possibly out of a drive. He could end up somewhere, but everyone looks like they're locked in as well. Rast is a big loss as well. They will appear in the championship. I think coming into it as well for season 8, the big gap is we've got Venturi finally coming into their own. They've got 2 race winners now. I think it was definitely important that, as Ed was saying in the comms, that Nato won today as well. It's a big ego boost. And looking at it as well, Jaguar got to improve on this bizarre stopping of the car technology. It affected Bird yesterday. It's affected Evans today. It's happened before in the season as well in some practice sessions. And I don't think it's happened in the race as much, but that's got to come under wraps as well. Bird wants to go for another title, well, a title and another title fight. Verne and Da Costa at Venturi, DSG are going to be up there. Venturi going to be quicker. I think the big question next year is who is the championship rival going to be? Because I think we're going to have a David and Goliath battle brewing next year because so many manufacturers are stepping away. The independents are taking back over. Audi's left, of course. Att doesn't want to come back to that. Andretti is now back as purely Andretti. Hopefully they won't change the liveries to make it even more difficult for the commentators. But I think a David and Goliath battle next year. And looking into it as well, my big question would be, who's going to partner Sebastian Buemi at Nissan? Because we know Roland's going. The rumor is Alexander Albon, but it could be anybody. My pick also, would they risk putting De Grassi in there if Albon gets a call back up to Formula One to go for AlphaTauri? We saw that happen before when Albon was supposed to come in. He got a job at Red Bull. So watch this space over the next 4 months.
Yeah, the Nissan seat is very interesting. What I heard from Jack Giordana today was that it's Daniel Kvyat who is actually the favourite because Albon seems very interested in a move to IndyCar. And he was seen, as we said yesterday, hanging around at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So Kobe's is making the same point as I am in the chat on our end. So exactly, Albon very interested in IndyCars and potentially doing a test with them. We'll have to see how that turns out. He wouldn't be the first F1 convert to IndyCar, but also wouldn't be the first F1 convert to Formula E if he made that choice. And I'm sure Danny Kvyat would be very eager to get the seat, but also Lucas Di Grassi desperate. He said in interviews that he's 90% sure he's going to have a seat for next season. And it looks like the two options he would be considering would be Nissan and Venturi, to be honest. Although with Norman Nato winning today, you would think he's made a pretty good case for a little more of this to come. And he's been, so diligent in the simulator. While he's waiting for Felipe Massa to basically get bored of Formula E, Norman Nato, so he could get promoted. And he's done a really strong job, especially in some races this season where he's really had to get his elbows out and really impressed. The other big story for me is McLaren's big decision. They've signed the option to potentially enter Gen 3 for 2022-2023, whenever that starts. I guess it'll more be closer to 2023, the chances are. But they have to make the decision before the end of the year. So what is Zach Brown going to do? And if they do decide to enter, who's going to be on the books? Because, of course, we just talked about René Rast and Di Grassi potentially being free agents. But there's plenty of drivers in the McLaren stable. Felix Rosenqvist, of course, with lots of Formula E experience, was a really impressive driver for Mahindra in years gone by. So lots of driver changes to do. Speaking of Mahindra, Oliver Rowland moving to Mahindra is going to be very interesting. He had his last race with Nissan today, finished second, couldn't quite get on top of Norman Nato. So I think Oliver Rowland's going to go very well indeed. And those are the stories that I'm going to be watching out for.
Some big stories. And Ed, we do have a question from Amber in the chat room. Will McLaren be a new team or one of the existing teams? I think they're talking about like how Mercedes was essentially HWA before. Do you have any insights on that? She also mentions too, she believes Albon to IndyCar.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see on the Alex Albon situation. That's really down to the teams and Alex himself, really, where he wants to go. But as for McLaren, it definitely sounds like what's being considered at the moment is a factory entry. Because, of course, McLaren couldn't enter during Gen 2 because they're the ones building the batteries. So there would be a bit of a conflict of interest there, which wouldn't be ideal. But they will be able to enter in Gen 3 because Williams are making the battery. Williams Advanced Engineering, of course. Which is a separate company to Williams F1, separate to Jaguar, who use a lot of former advanced engineering employees, I think, essentially. And so McLaren have already entered Extreme E. They've even signed a driver. I believe it's Tanner Faust, who they've signed for the Extreme E lineup. We don't know who the female driver is going to be joining Tanner Faust yet. But I definitely think what's being considered in Formula E is a factory entry, not necessarily a partnership with Andretti as, say, supplying the powertrains. We'll have to see what Andretti does. They've got another season with the old BMW technology because it's not changing for Season 8. So a lot of it's going to close up, I think, because a lot of the teams have got the same powertrain, the same hardware, but the software is what's really going to be developed. So watch the space for McLaren. They could partner as a manufacturer, but what's been talked about at the moment sounds like a factory entry to me, and I think it would be really impressive if they did.
And Kobe as well put it in the chat as well that a Van Dorn McLaren Formula E reunion with Mercedes potentially out. That's a possibility.
Well, he's also said Vodafone as well. Oh no, not Vodafone. Van Dorn.
No, Van Dorn. Yeah, I thought it was Vodafone as well. Just for a second, I was thinking, do I have to get my orange T-shirt back out that I had on at Hungary? But I think that's a very interesting call, and I that could be a possibility. If Mercedes do bow out, they could still be a power unit supplied to McLaren for a couple of years until they get theirs developed. They've already got the battery power from Williams, as you say. But that's a possibility. Van Dorn was a very good fit with McLaren, and the only reason he swapped was because they got in Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris, of course, and Alonso went out as well. So I reckon Van Dorn could be over there, but once bitten, twice shy, maybe, from the McLaren program. I mean, we do remember, of course, McLaren used to go through a phase where if they had a bad championship, out you go, you kicked out the back door with a bag over your head and sort of shunned down into motorsport. But I think Van Dorn and McLaren as a team up, that's a possibility. Personally, I always thought Van Dorn would have ended up in IndyCar as well, as when it was announced they were going to run Aaron McLaren Schmidt-Peterson, but he chose Mercedes. And also as well, just a reminder, de Vries chose Formula E as well over a drive in Formula One, which I've recently found out as well, because me and Ed had the discussion. It was going to be with Toro Rosso at the time gone by as well. He would have, I think, replaced Brendan Hartley that year, but that's why they had to bring Kvyat back for 19.
Amazing stuff, and definitely was an amazing season of Formula E. And we encourage everyone, especially if you're watching the first time and getting new to Formula E, be sure to follow Ed at Formula E Zone. Hey, Jack. Jack was at Berlin all weekend. Definitely very excited for next year. And of course, Nyck de Vries is your essentially 2020, because it goes 2020, 2021. 2020 ABB FIA Formula E World Champion. However, in our in-house grid rating, very interesting. Lucas de Grassi finished ahead of essentially the champion. The big thing was when it came to Lucas de Grassi, 60% of the time he finished in the top 10 compared to 40% of the time Nyck de Vries. Essentially outside of the podium finishes, de Grassi 6 times finished in the top 10, de Vries only twice. That was the big difference, but at the end it is Nyck de Vries, your FIA Formula E World Champion.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.